Ladies and gentlemen, it's me, it's Madletter53. I am back on the DDT podcast. No special guest this time. No. I am here to talk about something very specific. Obviously, if you've seen the thumbnail, I'm here to talk about not what transpired at WrestleMania, or John Cena's title reign, or the heel turn again itself. No, I want to talk about how WWE, in my opinion, has hurt their champion, or should I say their former champion, and I'm talking about the character of Cody Rhodes from a narrative perspective. I believe that WWE really dorked up. I think that in the long run, people will probably not care, that people will look past this and think, whatever, it's in the past. But I really like a strong narrative. I like a core story that has a lot of layers, and obviously we are still in the midst of the story, especially with The Rock going on a podcast or an interview, the Pat McAfee show, and then tweeting out later that, everything's a work in this business, everything's a work, you're getting worked. So take it with a grain of salt is what I'm saying, because things can change, especially in this business, in the wrestling business. But what I want to start talking about is where the fracture got created. And I think whether you are for Cody Rhodes, whether you're a fan of the character, or whether you're against the character, a lot of people will agree with me on this. The part that damaged the title reign is the setup and the failed attempt of a strong follow-through. What I mean by that is that WrestleMania is always the season ender for the year. It is a televised show where instead of something where they take a break for X amount of months, it's continuous. So WrestleMania is seen as that crescendo of the year, of the calendar year, the season ender, the grand finale. You get the point. WrestleMania 40 was a crescendo to a larger story arc. More than just one WrestleMania to tell said story. One could make the argument that it was told over 3 WrestleManias, starting back with WrestleMania 38, concluding with WrestleMania 40, WrestleMania 39 serving as the bridge between the 2 WrestleManias. Either way, I feel like if you look back at WrestleMania 39 and 40, there is a cohesive story, core story that just has a natural flow to things, with certain people rising up the ranks and the cards. And I'm giving you all this background context before going into anything further because I feel like it's important. The insertion of The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, I'm going to stick with just the character distinction of The Rock, the character of The Rock, the final boss. You're inserting his character and it gets generated in the build-up to WrestleMania 40. And what we get is a conflict of whether or not Cody Rhodes will main event. And there's a little bit of detail there that I have a problem with because they had Cody Rhodes step aside for The Rock to fight Roman Reigns, and the crowd rallied behind Cody Rhodes to finish the narrative because ultimately the journey of the character of Cody Rhodes / the person was the core story that fans were invested in. The majority of the fans wanted to see the crescendo of the story arc. They want to see the hero's journey be concluded, similar to Kofi Kingston, similar to Daniel Bryan, similar to X character, etc. Fans rally behind a good underdog story, and I feel that Cody Rhodes was very unique in the sense that he's trying to conclude the family legacy, but the family legacy also ties into part 2, which is carrying the championship. So just as intriguing as it was to see the journey, I was also very much intrigued to see the conclusion of the story arc as champion. Because in stories and in writing, you typically, once the hero's journey is completed, you typically don't see the follow-through. In wrestling, we, as fans and the audience, get a wonderful luxury of seeing the hero's journey be concluded, and then we always get the and then, whether it's a good or bad delivery. There's always the and then, which I cherish and always am excited to see, because I feel like it's a unique aspect of storytelling that doesn't really get to be in the forefront of most stories in writing or in cinema. We typically don't see the hero's triumph going forward. We may see a highlight package, we may see a time skip, but in wrestling we get the in the moment. There's always the and next. Where I'm going with this is that I know I kind of went down a rabbit hole there. The Rock was obviously jealous. The character of The Rock, the final boss, was jealous that Cody Rhodes went back on his word and his promise, and then wound up fighting Roman at WrestleMania. The Rock tried to throw everything at him, the bloodline, everything else, but ultimately Cody Rhodes succeeded and triumphed. Here's where the problem began, though. And I'm going to pull up this picture because I feel like it's important. It's this photo. And if you don't remember, or maybe you weren't watching wrestling at the time and missed it, the night after WrestleMania, I had people that had not watched wrestling in years, or maybe watched off and on, be very intrigued by this segment here, this moment. The Rock and Cody Rhodes have a face-to-face, and The Rock says that he's going to come back for that, for Cody Rhodes. He's going to go away for a while, but the final boss will come back for him. So what this tells the audience, whether it's in cinema, whether it's in a book, this villain will return. This villain will return in a larger scale. He will be looking for revenge. So we, as the audience, know in our minds that it's a box office sequel to what we just witnessed. So we got the and then that, oh crap, The Rock's going to come back and he's going to come for that title. Hence the final boss. So obviously, the intrigue there is, when is he going to come back? When is The Rock going to get involved? When is The Rock going to get involved? And here's where I have a problem with it, because I feel like it's dampened the reign of Cody Rhodes over the calendar year, is that people look at it and say, Cody Rhodes' reign was boring. Cody Rhodes' reign was boring. Cody Rhodes' reign was boring. There's a lot of that online. A week into the title reign, people were saying it. And it just built and built and built. Cody Rhodes feuded with AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, Gunther, Solo Sikoa, the Bloodline. We got a team up with Roman Reigns. We had him feud with Kevin Owens again. We had teasers with Randy Orton. We had teasers with Jey Uso as a potential. But ultimately, we got John Cena as the conclusion. On paper, and as a result, I know everyone talks about the title defenses. I believe Cody Rhodes had 8 title defenses over the calendar year, and he wrestled a bunch of matches. He was not a slouch. He was not a slacker. He was featured a lot in the main events. He was featured in house shows. He made the rounds. He did what he said he was going to do, except for on-screen title defenses, which makes sense why they limited it for the champion. Number 1, Cody Rhodes tore his pectoral muscle in 2022. You don't want to oversaturate this man and overwork him, especially since he is the workhorse for more crucial storylines. So you're being a little bit more careful with him. Number 2, on top of that, you want to build intrigue and investment for the title reigns. His matches are must-see because there is that lingering detail of a larger story at play. Plus, I think the overall stories that he had with AJ, Kevin Owens, the evolution of the characters, Randy Orton being teed up, the Bloodline storylines, I liked all of them. Did it drag a little bit on the weekly shows? Yes. But the key piece that everyone was holding on to is that The Rock's going to come back. We got the teaser at Bad Blood back in August or October. I can't remember the time frame. Maybe it was September. Either way, fall 2024, we got the teaser for The Rock making his return. And he does like the finger over the neck, like you're going out. He counts the 1, 2, 3, does a hand gesture. Nobody knew what it meant. I thought it just meant your days are numbered. We're counting down the days, 1, 2, 3, and then it's over. Apparently, it had everything to do with John Cena. Anyways, we do the heel turn of John Cena. I talked about that previously. The Rock came back, offered Cody Rhodes to be bolstered into a bigger megastar. You don't necessarily need to just be champion, but you can be greater than a champion. You can be more than a champion. You can be a megastar. Okay. For some reason, Cody Rhodes' character is entertaining it for the several weeks to build up intrigue, to sell tickets for Elimination Chamber. I think I already talked about that enough. Maybe not necessarily the ticket part, but I talked about how dumb it was that he would even be entertaining it because of his character and how he's written. But ultimately, he tells The Rock, screw you. And this prompts John Cena to kick Cody Rhodes in the groin. Rock whips Cody Rhodes with the belt again, bloodies and batters him. And then we're off to the races for WrestleMania, except John Cena only shows up for less than half of the build on the shows, and The Rock doesn't show up at all, even at WrestleMania. And on top of that, John Cena obviously wins the world title. He becomes world champion. Congratulations to Cena. And we get this image. Cody Rhodes walking away, and John Cena, now the 17-time world champion, with the crowd cheering Cena the whole match, and the fans booing Cody Rhodes. There's several layers to this. I get that fans were tired of Cody Rhodes, and I guessed correctly that they would pull Cody Rhodes off of the TV screen for at least until after Backlash, because they want to give the fans a break after oversaturating his story for the better part of 3 years, almost 3 years. So I get that. I would have done the same thing in my own writing in terms of taking the hero off screen after being bested by John Cena. Give Cody Rhodes a much needed time off. The problem is the heel turn itself of John Cena, that placement, and what The Rock and The Rock's involvement. So we got The Rock coming back, and he talks about Cody's soul. He offers him all these things. Cody says no, and Cena turns. Where does this hurt him in the end? Where does this hurt the champion? Where does this hurt? And I didn't want to say protagonist, because technically there's multiple protagonists in this company, but Cody Rhodes kind of been the main protagonist for the audience for the past several years. You hurt him. You hurt the title reign in the sense that the follow-through of the end of the reign was weak. I'm not talking about the match at WrestleMania. Yes, the match was kind of a dud. For some weird reason, fans are saying that, oh, it all makes sense. It makes sense that Cena's trying to ruin wrestling, so he would ruin WrestleMania. I feel like that's a larger cup of copium that you paid several $1,000s, and the match sucked. That's my opinion. I thought the match was okay. I thought the ending to the match was kind of, okay, I guess that's the end. That was a little bit deflating, especially after a year-long title reign. I couldn't imagine trying to do a week delivery with Cody beating Roman Reigns. It just feels so flat-footed and just, way to take the wind out of the sails of this entire feud. Although they were doing that anyways because Cena barely showed up for any of it. Maybe that was the point. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But Cody Rhodes, for the most part, except for the 2 clashes on the microphone between him and Cena, pretty much carried the feud. In terms of the build, I thought the promos were great, but Cody was constantly cutting promos in between and telling the everyday story. It was quite literally filler. I don't know what else to put it as. You had 7 weeks to build this up, and it just felt It's one of the biggest of all time. On paper, yeah. But it certainly wasn't in build. And we've had weak builds to WrestleManias and great follow-throughs. But this WrestleMania just felt Like that's the end of Cody's reign. The guy who triumphantly ended Roman Reigns' title reign. And then The Rock doesn't show up at all. There's that expectation is what I'm getting at. There's the expectation for more. And maybe that was the point of Cena's promo. You get nothing at the end. But it does hurt the champion at the end of the day. Number one, you made Cody Rhodes look foolish back in 24 by having him step aside for The Rock. I do not care if it is a detail that the fans have moved on from. I do not care if it is a detail that the company has moved on from or tries to forget. You did it. You made Cody Rhodes step aside after his lifelong journey that is stupid narratively. On paper, you do not do that unless you have a logical reason, and they didn't. They did not have any good excuse. I know there was a bunch of backstage politicking. There is no excuse for it. Whoever is at fault for it, kick rocks. Because you almost ruined everything. Because at the end of the day, this is theater. Wrestling is theater. There is obviously, I know I'm simplifying it, and that probably offends a lot of people, and I do apologize if that offends people when it comes to calling it theater, but it is very much Shakespearean. It is Cirque du Soleil. It is a live performance of acrobatics and storytelling to the highest degree on a global stage all the time. There is an expectation, narratively. When The Rock inserts himself, when the final boss character gets inserted, there is a understanding that there is something greater happening. And the fact that they brushed away, they tried, whoever they is, to brush aside the main protagonist, to shovel in The Rock, who was 2 years too late, is dumb. You were too late, too late to the party to have your match with Roman, narratively speaking, at WrestleMania. Should have done it the year before or the year before that. Probably 38, but whatever. I digress. You want to fast forward. Well, now we got The Rock offering Cody Rhodes more. What's more? He's already accomplished everything that he set out for. The path for Cody Rhodes' character was about the follow-through. As the champion, how to carry yourself. It was never about a greater ambition beyond the wrestling ring. So why would he entertain it? Unless you're planting the seeds that he is greedy and desires more than wrestling. But it's always been about family to him. Unless you're pivoting the narrative, but they've never gone back to that. Which tells me that that was just something they put in because they needed to give something. But if that's the case, then Cody should have immediately said no. Because it's a dumb offer. Furthermore, if I can rewind, because I forgot to mention this, The Rock, whoever wrote his script on the Raw for Netflix, where he's highlighting how close they've become, and he did it when he offered it to Cody Rhodes. We've gotten so close, Cody. We've gotten so close together over the past year. From when you left him bloody. When you left him lying. Does everyone forget the Mama Rhodes part where he left him in a bloody heap and wiped his own blood on his mother on a belt labeled for his mother to be gifted? In 1 year's time, apparently they're buddy-buddy. And I have a point to this. I always try and have points. But he shows a clip of them drinking tequila after the show on the Raw of Netflix. But before that, 3 months prior, The Rock was sending him a warning. So in that amount of time, in a full calendar year, we have had, except for one clip that's being shown to us very conveniently, to an audience's perspective on this theatrical stage. Look, we've gotten close. We've gotten so close. There is a rule in writing, and I very much agree with it, even though I may not be the best of it at its execution. And the rule is show, do not tell. And I know that they're showing this clip, but you're telling us that there was this off-screen development for an entire year through one clip. No, that does not work. That is bad. Bad. Show, don't tell. Show the development over time. That way the fans can get invested. Don't drop a bombshell at the tail end of the finish line. It's not how you write effectively. And I know that I'm preaching from the grandstands with everyone else. But you don't do that in writing. In my opinion, if you want it to be effective. You've got to show the development over time, how you heal the bridge. He whipped him with a belt. Why are you making your hero shake his hand? Why aren't you showing like an Emperor Palpatine, like slowly maneuvering and changing the narrative? You know, Cody, I did all that because I wanted to toughen you up. I wanted to build this intrigue. The last words exchanged between the two of you on screen in character was that he was coming for your belt. That is a threat to everything you've stood for. Do something about it. If you're the hero of the story. So, all these components weigh down the reign for me. It hurts the champion because it makes him look stupid. It makes him look foolish. Why would you trust The Rock? Why would you trust all these things? It makes the audience ask these questions. Why would you trust The Rock with all these things? What if you even said yes to being the megastar and he still betrayed you? I know that we don't get that storyline, but what if? Like, it starts playing through my mind of all these potential possibilities or all these questions, but you didn't get any of it or any of those potential details or even entertaining any of those thoughts because they did all this off-screen development through one clip up while they're telling you in the run-up to WrestleMania, yeah, by the way, we're now close. Can I have your soul? And you join me. Which tells me that potentially that wasn't in the narrative. Now, Rock comes out here on Pat McAfee's podcast, and he talks about how, that was a last-minute things because ticket sales were low at Elimination Chamber. Maybe, number one, don't overprice your tickets, TKO. Number two, maybe stop bringing back the past if it's not going to be effective in the story in the long run. Rock says that, the story's done with the final boss. The story's done with the final boss. And then he turns right around on Twitter and says that you're all being worked. The problem with you, Rock, and the problem that hinders Cody's reign is that you set this expectation that there is going to be more, and then there is nothing. And maybe there is going to be more after the fact, but you've created this expectation of the reign. Oh, well, actually, I'm not going to be the one that comes back for it. It's really going to be Cena. I changed my mind. It's going to be Cena, and yeah. The other part of the title reign at the end is Cena itself, in my opinion, because when you've created all this intrigue, when you've created all this hype with this moment right here, it snowballs down to John Cena and Cody Rhodes. John Cena pulls the trigger and then Cody Rhodes storms off out of WrestleMania, but it's less of what was potentially going to be more effective. And where I'm going with that is that Cody Rhodes has already been surprised. He's already been kicked in the nuts. He's already been stretched out, whipped with a belt. And he's already talked about how he's devastated and heartbroken that Cena, his hero, betrayed him and turned against him going into WrestleMania. Now, with his defeat, it feels more like he's pulling a Ronda Rousey card after she lost to Holly Holmes in UFC, where he walks off saddened and defeated and can't show his face. I'm not saying that that's what it is yet because we don't know narratively. That's part of the follow-through, where they can salvage this part. So I know I'm bringing this stuff up, but it can still be salvaged writing-wise. The bigger impact would have been WrestleMania. I feel like, especially watching WrestleMania and the build-up, that was supposed to be the original plan, John Cena turning heel on the grandest stage of them all, at WrestleMania. Reason being is because if Cody Rhodes walks off after being kicked in the nuts by his mentor after his mentor wins the belt, it has a far greater impact in context to why he's walking off, because his hero just low-blowed him. And he's devastated that not only that he lost, but the swerve is that the very guy that he believed was righteous fell. The guy he idolized, one of the people he looked up to when he was wrestling, turned when he thought that is the model. That is the status quo. That is what I need to be. There is far more layers to WrestleMania if you do so. The match can suck, but the details in between can be far more impactful. And everyone has been telling me that I've talked to about this angle. Cena turning heel is greater than Hulk Hogan's heel turn to make the NWO. It's greater than this. It's greater than that. It's greater than this. It is an impactful, viral moment, and because of the context and the failed follow-through by this company's writing staff, it is underwhelming, if I can steal the quote from John Cena. Narratively, because it can be so much more. And people can sit here with me all day long and tell me that it's great. I agree, it is great. The problem is it can be so much more impactful to audiences. Wrestling is, to me, what some people would consider Harry Potter to them. Reading the books, reading Percy Jackson, reading 39 Clues, reading Lord of the Rings. There are long-term stories narratively that captivate us in a way that tells not only great stories that sweep us off our feet narratively, but immerse us into the worlds, immerse us into the characters that we look up to, whether they're fictional or live action, whether they're conjured on the pages of a script, or whether it is in front of us filmed through a camera lens. Fans around the world, or people around the world, typically love stories outside of the days that we live in our lives, because it gives adventure, it gives escape, it gives immersion into something else other than what we do. It helps break up the monotonous slog that is life, at least what some of us go through on the day-to-day. And it gives us a sense of adventure. And when you have a failed follow-through, it can dampen the people's intrigue. I want wrestling to be global. I want people to love it. I want to draw people in. And when I have people telling me who came back to watch WrestleMania 41 to see what happened, that they don't want to watch further, it sucks to see, because I want people to stay and I want people to enjoy it just as much as I have. I want people to become fans, to be involved and invested in the writing. Maybe not necessarily get immersed in the behind the scenes, but get immersed into the greater stories and themes and moral conflicts that occur and get to be played out on the wrestling ring, which is the stage. And I feel like they have hurt a champion's title reign to where it just is a shrug of the shoulders because of the failed follow-through. And the details that were set up, the dominoes that were set up, didn't complete the track. And I say all this, and maybe we will get more. Maybe we will get more. And all of my entire 30-minute rant, which I am sorry that it's lasted that long. I thought it would be much shorter, but I guess this is why it's called a podcast. I would think that this gets revisited and I am proven wrong. I hope that there is a way narratively to help this reign of Cody Rhodes be reflected on in a positive light, because I do think it was an entertaining reign. I do think it was very fun to watch, and I do think that the past year, 370 plus days of him being champion, was effective. He got to be champion at a peak time in terms of popularity, and globally and financially for the company, and now we're rocking with the heel Cena, and it will be interesting to see how things move forward. But as far as it stands, I feel like his reign was negatively impacted by the subtle details that WWE tried to inject into it, and whether there was because of backstage politicking by certain individuals, or the writing team just couldn't make it work, or couldn't think themselves out of the hat, or outside of the squared box, it feels underwhelming. And I want it to be better. And I want it to be greater. And I hope you all do too. I hope that this video was at least somehow constructive in starting a discussion. And if you have different thoughts, or if you disagree, if you have an opinion about this as well, I would love to hear it. Put it in the comments. I would love to discuss this. I want to create positive and healthy discussion to even talk about how we could potentially could have come up with something better, even though that's a what if and we can't change what ifs, or what you think would go from here, or how we could go about trying to repair that. I think it has everything to do with how Cody Rhodes returns and what he does going forward that could make or break the legacy that the title reign created. And I also think how John Cena progresses forward will also impact how it's looked back upon as well. But we'll see. Time will tell. Either way, I hope that this was informative. I hope it was thought-provoking in a way that maybe it gave somebody a different perspective. And most importantly, I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and I hope that you all stay tuned as well to see what is to come with wrestling. Thank you all so much for listening. It was wonderful to talk to all of you again, even though it was more long-winded than what I wanted to be. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel, of course, if you choose. But most importantly, as always, suit up, Matt Army. I will see you all next time on the DDT podcast.